Magic. Hopefully you can hear me. Now, it does show that you can hear me, so I should be okay. Hello, everyone. I am not Abigail. I am Gavin, the other director of Sensible Senko, and you probably know me because I type loads of stuff into your Facebook group anyway. Today, Abigail has actually had to go out. She is away doing some very interesting things down in London. So she's left us a video of the Ofsted Halloween special, all about tricks, treats, and ticking boxes, because that's what you end up doing maybe with Ofsted. But it's not only that. This is one part of a huge series that we've got for Ofsted on the Halloween Senko diet. Let me get that right, which is now available on the website to members. So just hop along across there and you will see we've got a 5-minute inspection ready checklist, and then we've got a guide to speaking with clarity under inspections. But not only that, there's lots of other documents that we've got under there. So have a look at that and let me now pass across to Dear Abigail. That's going to be a new section in the website. You know that, don't you? Anyway, bye.
And as Gavin has said, this is a recording because I have popped off to London to go and do something, not Halloweeny. And this is my second attempt at recording it. And it took me an hour and a half to record the last one with multiple technical issues and the camera not working. And we got to the end of it. It's like, okay, it doesn't matter so much the camera's not working, only to discover that the sound wasn't turned on. So I've just spoken to myself for the last 90 minutes. I would repeat the story that I told you at the beginning of the last one, but it's irrelevant as you can't see me. So I'm not even going to go there. Right. We're talking about inspections or Ofsted, because that's the one that most people associate with inspections when we use it as a phrase. There is a new Ofsted framework. It comes into play in the second week of November. and all inspections from January will be on that new framework. It will be pilot schools in the first instance. And the positive news is that it will be HMI inspectors for those first couple of months, just so they can make sure that things are going to plan. Then they will bring in their senior inspectors, and then eventually we will have our run-of-the-mill inspectors, if you like. The more day-to-day type inspectors will be pulled into it from later next year. So they have said that they're positive about the changes. I'm positive about the changes. I quite like the new framework. That sounds a really awful thing to say. I don't think they're there to trip you up. And I do actually feel that inclusion, SEN, has got a bigger part in it now, and that can only be a good thing, because we can then start to do something that many of us have been trying to do for years, which is to drive forward change for SEM. So let's have a look at what we've actually got going on. Click on that slide and move that one forward. There we go. Okay, so I've actually called it a bit like stepping into a haunted house. It just fell quite nicely with the time of the year, really, to be honest. I don't really think of Ofsted as Halloween characters, but it just fell quite nicely. We are great at predicting bad things. Now, I'm hoping most of you will have been to somewhere like Alton Towers and the haunted house and all the rest of it. And let's face it, once you've been in one haunted house, you kind of know what's coming in the next one. So you might have watched a YouTube video. If you're like me, I'm an over-preparer. I would have checked things out. So I will have gone and watched a YouTube video, or read a review on it, or maybe I've read a story about it somewhere, or an article and somebody said it. So I don't get the jump scares as such, because I know that they are coming. I'm hoping this is going to make sense. It's a bit of an analogy I'm playing with. It's not unexpected. The timing of them will change. The exact costume that somebody is wearing will change. The person playing that character will change. But I can predict what's about to happen. So it's fun. It still raises the adrenaline, but it doesn't matter so much. It's great. And I think inspections are a little bit the same thing. We only need a couple of people, half a dozen people, to tell us what their inspection was like for us to get the general gist of what it's going to be like. Yes, their phrasing of the questions is going to be slightly different. The actual inspector themselves, the characters, is going to be slightly different. The choice of questions, so the choice of whether they're throwing jelly at you or worms, is going to be different. If an Ofsted inspector throws jelly and worms at you, please tell me and take photos, because that would be funny. But I think you're getting what I'm trying to say, that this is about, we can predict what is coming. It isn't supposed to be scary, and it does help us to understand things. Now, many years ago, the Ofsted framework used to be this kind of secret document that you weren't allowed to see. Then it became that you could see the framework, but you didn't see what sat behind it. And I remember the Twitter storm of a couple of years ago when somebody discovered these deep dive frameworks that Ofsted inspectors were given, but us in schools were unaware of them. It's like, yeah, we'll have those, thanks. Somebody shared them and got into trouble. But what I'm trying to say is that's not the case anymore. Ofsted have their framework. They have these toolkits, and they have made those toolkits publicly available. So you can go and you can find exactly what it is that Ofsted is working to. They have also got a YouTube channel. Look it up. And on there are videos that show you what they're expecting from primary schools, secondary schools, special schools, APs, early years, post 16. And there was another one as well, which I can't remember off the top of my head. They have actually put out their videos, their training videos, so that you can see those. So if you missed all of those that were going on earlier in the year, over the last couple of weeks in September, then you can go and watch those on the Ofsted Ofsted YouTube website. Okay. We have got an inspection cast going on here. I want to make it clear, like I said at the beginning, that this isn't just about Ofsted, but I am going to focus on Ofsted. So we have got Ofsted inspectors, and they are going to be inspecting 6 evaluation areas. I've got a combination of the old terminology and new terminology here, just so that we're all kind of clear, I suppose, on what it is we're looking at. So I've got inclusion, curriculum and teaching, achievement, attendance, behaviour, personal development and wellbeing, and leadership and governance. We then have SIAMS inspections, or you may have some other form of faith inspection. So generally speaking, SIAMS is coming to our Christian and Catholic schools, and what they're looking for is that focus on values and ethos. So how are our students with SEND and inclusion authentically included within those schools? And then you may well be involved in local authority and multi-academy trust reviews. So these are to do with consistency, compliance and collaboration. Lots of C's today. And, local authorities, you may well or may well not be involved in a local authority review. They're asking for advice, so that they will come out to those schools that the local authority has identified to find out how your local authority supports you. Sometimes the local authority likes to send you a script to say, we've done all of these things for you this year. Please make sure you mention them. That's your choice. So we have those ones going on. You might end up involved in those. And I've put matter reviews in there. So lots of multi-academy trusts. We've got perhaps the SEND director who's in charge of 4 schools or 40 schools. It doesn't really matter, but they're not in there on a day-to-day basis. So what they're doing is they're going in, they do a review perhaps once a year, maybe once every 2 years, and they're looking for consistency across their schools perhaps, or maybe they're looking for good practice to share to other schools, or maybe they're doing due diligence in bringing somebody new on board and finding out what that baseline is. Under the new inspection framework for Ofsted, just to be really clear, there is a 7th area. That is safeguarding. This one is what we call the limiting judgment one. It is either met or not met. It's black and white. You either meet safeguarding criteria or you don't, which is good in my eyes. So just being aware that one sits, but it sits separately, and it's not graded in the same fashion as the other things that sit within the framework. I'm now trying to remember what I said on the previous recording and what I haven't said now so far, because I did go off a tangent on the other one, but it was a useful tangent. Here we have got the spooky truth. So Ofsted are going to come in, and we used to say that they came in with a preconceived idea of where that school was. We never proved it, and nobody would ever admit to it. But we all have preconceptions of things. So they were quite clear to say, no, we don't. This time, they're actually doing it slightly differently. They have said, I was at a talk by, I've forgotten her name. It'll come to me, but she's an Ofsted inspector for SEND, HMI, I should say. And she basically, Tina, first name's Tina, Tina Paget. There you go. I said it would come to me. She said that they're going to come in and they are looking for you to be at the expected standard. So if you look at their toolkit, there's 3 columns on their table and then 2 rows on the next page. But imagine it is a 5-column table. They are looking for you to be sat smack bang in the middle at met expected. And that is where they're expecting about 90% of schools to sit. And they will be looking for the evidence that demonstrates that. And if they find that evidence, and they've got all of those, and they might start looking for, have they got something beyond that? And they can start looking at strong and exemplary. Or if you haven't got it, they might be considering whether it's those 2 grades that sit below the met expected. But instead of having this preconceived idea of the school, they're coming in with this idea of, you are already at where we want you, but let's just double check it. Okay, I think that's a very different approach, and I think it's quite positive in a lot of ways. Under this new framework, we have got inclusion as its own evaluation area. That's not happened before. But to be absolutely clear, it also rolls across everything else. And this is why we cannot place the blame of inclusion against the Senko alone, because you're not in charge of all those other areas. So there could very well be the scenario where inclusion, because of the criteria that sit within that, comes out really, really strong, maybe literally in the strong column, but the curriculum or achievement come out as needs improvement because they haven't met the things that they're required to do. So this is our whereas previously SEM was kind of hidden somewhere and usually ended up as a comment, if you were lucky, related to curriculum, but not directly in the control of the Senko. We now have a whole section which we can paint the narrative behind. So I've called it a golden thread there. It weaves through everything. Okay, we have the knock at the door. It's our first summoning, and it comes about 24 hours before they arrive. So this is that chance to set the tone. What they will do is they will ask for a representative or the head teacher to be their guide throughout the time that they're with you, which is usually 2 days. So the head teacher will nominate somebody. It's unlikely to be the Senko. They will also want to spend about half a day with the Senko. Now, what I'm hearing so far from pilot studies is that half day has been spent in one whole chunk, not spread over periods of time. So they're coming in and they're actually wanting it on the first morning. Whether that continues is a different matter, but that's kind of what I'm hearing at the moment. So you're looking at 3 to 4 hours, and you're going to have some things ready for them. You're going to want to be able to locate your SEND information report and your SEN register. You are going to want to have quick and easy access to any provision mapping or overviews of support that you have got. You are going to want to have that data and narrative that explains recent progress or outcomes. You may wish to have anonymised case studies. I'll come back to case studies in a moment. And then you probably want some records of staff development, so CPD logs, training logs, whatever. You need to be able to lay your hands on that information really, really quickly. Here I've said a minute, later on in the slides I call it 30 seconds. To be perfectly honest, if it takes you longer than 1 minute to find a document, either on a computer system or in the filing cabinet once you're stood in front of the filing cabinet, then you need a different filing system. You need to know where things are. So what I said about case studies there is that you should not be producing case studies for Ofsted. You use case studies for yourself. And in this particular case, you may well want to tell a story of a student who's making incredible progress. Or you keep muddling them up with somebody else, or you think that on the day when you're talking to the inspector, you're going to get very, very nervous and forget what it is you want to say. That is when you create yourself a case study. Do not bother creating anything for an inspection. First of all, if they need it, you can pull it off and print it while they're there. Secondly, they do not have time to sit and look through a lever arch folder of all of the wonderfully printed, double-sided, bright gloss colour documents that you want to put in front of them. They'll take them from you because they're polite, but they do not have the time to do it. That said, if there is something that you desperately want them to be aware of and you feel you've not had the chance to discuss it, stick it on a single A4 sheet with a couple of graphics on it if possible, says she who is not visual. But, make it quick and simple for them to say, because if they see it, they can't unsee it. And 1 sheet of paper is not unreasonable. Giving them a folder is, they do not have time. Pitfalls to avoid, so I kind of started saying it, drowning your inspectors in documents they haven't asked for. More is not better. Keeping staff in the dark. Your colleagues need to be able to explain inclusion, especially your teaching assistants and LSAs, because they're working with those students all of the time. So how are they going to express themselves? What is it they're going to say? I've called it the hidden practice trap here. So this is the one where we have brilliant things go on every single day, but as humans, we've focused on the negatives and they're the only things that we've remembered. A really great tip for this is at the end of each day, try and capture something positive. Scribble it in a paper diary if you've got one, put it on a post-it note, stick it on a wall, write it in an Outlook calendar as an entry for that day, whatever it takes. Then go back to them and have a look and go, oh, yeah, we've got a cluster of these things here. These are really good, and I want to share these with Ofsted at some point. Because in the moment, you won't be able to remember the positive things. That's a stress response. So what you really want to do is gather them over time. And it is useful, but it's also useful one for yourselves as well, because lots of Zenkos at the moment are feeling quite down with the role, and just being able to go back and go, that was my positive, that was my little light that day. It can be really, really helpful. And then I've put evidence everywhere. Put them somewhere you can access them quickly, and that it's not just you that can access it. So if it's information that needs to be shared, for example, the SEN register, everybody in the school should have access to it. Make sure it's in a single chosen place that everybody can access. If it's information that only really you and your team need, then again, make sure that's in a shared place. There isn't anything about private documents when we're talking SEN here. You know, all of that information is about students within your school, so it's not yours. So put it somewhere where other people can access it, and make sure that they know how and when and where to access it, just in case, heaven forbid, that you're not available for that inspection, because they're going to need to pull that data quickly and easily. What do they love to see? They love to see clear evidence of impact. So that pupil progress, the confidence, the attendance, all of those things. They love to see consistent language, consistent understanding. So everybody using the same language. This is where it worries me that some schools, when they do when they do staff training, they have stopped inviting TAs to it because they don't pay TAs to stay for CPD. And that means that your TAs don't necessarily know the same things as your teachers do. They haven't got shared language. So your teachers are talking about dual coding and your TAs are talking about the worksheet with the pictures on it. Or your teachers are talking about cognitive load and your TAs are like, yeah, wherever. You know, it really is important that our teaching assistants, our LSAs, even our midday supervisors to a certain extent, but not in the same vein, need to have common language about different things, because that's what Ofsted's going to want to be seeing. Confident staff, so individuals that can describe the adaptations, explain why things work, evidence that difference makes, and then authentic stories. So those real journeys of the students through your school. That's your case study if you can't remember them off the top of your head. And the reason for this is we want SEN to be enmeshed into everything within the school and not a bolt-on. It's not tagged on at the end. It's intertwined with everything that we're doing. Okay, tick boxes. We no longer have intent, implement, impact, which I'm so pleased about, because A, I forget those three words and the order that they belong in, and B, they are off a bit of a tongue twister to say. So that language has kind of gone. Now it's about knowing what matters, what works, and proving that it actually genuinely benefits. So you can ask yourself three questions. Do we know our children and their barriers? Can we show how our support removes or reduces those barriers? And can we demonstrate that pupils are thriving as a result? that's what we're really looking for. They're very, very powerful questions, and they're thought-provoking. They could take up a whole staff meeting just to do one of them. Do we know our children? Do we know their barriers? You might even be able to split them down a little bit further. But they are really, really key in terms of showing what's going on in your school. And this isn't about bureaucracy. It isn't about paperwork. It's about day-to-day practice. So we've got rid of deep dives, no more drowning. And instead, they're going to use what they call case sampling instead. So case sampling is where they're going to select a small number of students to follow them through their full experience. That might mean following them through a whole day of their learning. But what they're going to want to see in there is how their needs have been identified and assessed, what support and strategies have been made, how the progress and well-being is being monitored over time, and how the staff, parents and pupil themselves are describing any change. So what you can see here is this isn't just about SEN and inclusion. This is about everything over every aspect of that child's time at school. Or what does their day actually look like? So they're looking effectively for that translation of paper into practice. And that's a phrase I started using with the last framework. They want to see that what's on a piece of paper is actually what is delivered in practice. Now, I think they're going a bit further beyond that, because we've got some people who are amazing policy writers. They should write novels. But it doesn't always mean that that is what is going on in their school. And I think that has been picked up. And I do see some amazing looking policies. And then I walk through the door of the school and think, oh, that's not happening, is it? So, I suspect Ofsted see even more bizarre scenarios than I do. So they are really, really looking for, is what you are doing on a piece of, is what you are saying on a piece of paper actually what is happening in practice, in the classroom, in the day-to-day reality of those students and staff. We've got the data crypt. So this is really, really positive. We have always been measured against national averages. And yes, that is still going to be a part of it. It's still within the achievement strand. But what they're really doing now is they're recognising that SEN pupils can make positive progress from their own personal, individual baseline. And that's not always reflected with a national average. So what that means is our students who don't show that they've moved up a grade, or in old-fashioned levels, if you like, they don't show that. But what they do show is consolidation of a particular level, or they've moved up a tiny fraction of a step on something. And it's where your small steps progress tracking will come in. So have a look at pivots. If you don't have any small step progress tracking in there, just so that you can get that in place, so you're evidencing it. Pivots is mostly for primary schools at the moment, but they are discussing creating something for secondary. And to be fair, I have used it in secondary anyway, on the understanding it doesn't quite map to the curriculum perfectly, but actually the statements are useful anyway. And most of my students that were working at the levels that needed that small step progress weren't accessing the curriculum in the same sense. So it was a bit of a moot point. But yeah, it's a real positive, because we're now not just looking at, you should be a 4 by the time you end your secondary school career, or is it a 5 now? Heaven knows. What it's saying is, actually, you came in on this level and you've progressed to this level. And actually, you've made more progress than the kid who got a level 9, because they were already level 9 when they joined us. They stagnated. It's looking at it in that sense. They'll also be looking at attendance trends and wellbeing measures as well, which is no difference there. But like I say, I'm quite excited by that part of it. I think it's important. I think it's very, very valuable. We need to be able to show them things. So don't print things just for the sake of printing it. Save a tray. We've got cloud-based systems. Most of us use cloud-based systems. So remember to check your passwords. Remember to check that you've logged in recently and there hasn't been an update that you've missed, and therefore you've got to wait 40 minutes for it to update or for you to reset your password or something. Make sure you've got access to those systems and use them within those conversations. So when they ask you a question and you don't quite know the answer, you can go, oh, give me a second, and then you can pull it up. If you've got physical files, and let's face it, some things still are on pieces of paper, absolutely fine, and you can hand those over. They are GDPR compliant. It's for legitimate purpose. They are DBS checked, so you are okay handing something over to an Ofsted inspector and they will give it back to you at the end. And again, I've put there the 30-second rule. If you can't find it, if it takes you more than half a minute, then have a look at your retrieval practices, have a look at your system of filing things, because it needs to improve. Your TAs are absolutely invaluable in this, TA or LSA. So they see things on the day-to-day basis that you don't necessarily see. Yes, okay, you are the coordinator. You are in charge of Ella here in the example. But it doesn't mean that you see what happens with Ella on a day-to-day basis. So in this particular case, we've got Ella using her communication board more independently. She's initiating conversations with her peers, just not with adults. Now, actually, if I was a Senko going in to observe Ella, I might well just note, oh, she's still not using a communication board to tell me she needs to go to the toilet or to tell me this, that, or the other. I may well miss the bit where she's using it with her peers. And the TA who is more consistently with those students is more likely to pick up on those things. And that's really, really valuable evidence. And yes, you should absolutely be gathering it from an SEM perspective anyway, or you definitely need to let your TAs and LSAs speak with inspectors. So your TAs need to be able to articulate 3 things. They need to be able to articulate a pupil's specific need or barrier. They need to be able to explain the strategies and adaptations used, and they need to be able to talk about the improvement or the progress observed. And this isn't about memorizing scripts again, it's about that professional voice. So being able to naturally say what they need to say, articulate things, will really show that inclusion for students. We've got parent voice is really important. Lots of schools rely on the Ofsted parent voice collection, which is fine, but it is a snapshot in time. And just leaving it to that point in time means parents might not necessarily always be listened to. What I want to make really clear is that, yes, Ofsted do know that your most disgruntled parents will be the ones that type the essay, and your most happy parents will be the ones that don't bother filling it in because they're happy. So they are aware of that. When they come in and they are challenging you on the basis of what a parent has written on one of their essays, it is not challenging you as such. So generally speaking, if it's just one parent who's put in a bit of a disgruntled grumble about something, they're probably going to dismiss it. They're just going to go, yeah, okay. Whereas if they're picking up on a bit of a trend of something, or in their preliminary work or in their initial walk around, they have already picked up on something and it happens to be mirrored in some of those comments, that is when you are likely to get a bit of a grilling, for lack of a better word to use. Plus the fact it's Halloween, so we might as well do something like that. So just being, just understanding that one single disgruntled parent voice is not going to change the pathway that Ofsted is on. Multiple disgruntled voices, or disgruntled voices where the school evidence is supporting that voice, may well lead to challenge. And I will leave that there for you to ponder on. So you might want to do some short surveys, you might want to hold some coffee mornings, just even an email follow-up, a week after a meeting. How are things going for those parents that have expressed issues with you? It's really important, because it does show that collaboration, coordination that goes on with people, co-production. Pupils are actually really good. They're, straight from the mouths of babes, as they say. So we could be getting them to express things. Ofsted inspectors like to talk to children. I mean, personally, I'd rather not. But they do like to talk to children. Maybe because they think they're going to get that straight from the mouths of babes. I tend to find that when I have a group of students and I try to do pupil voice, I either get one end of it, which is really, 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 really positive, probably because I let schools choose who they're going to put in front of me, or I get they're too terrified to tell me, or I get the absolute opposite side of it, where they'll pick on every single negative possible. I also find with younger children that they're not able to express the three things that are on the screen there, which is what helps them learn effectively, who supports them and how that supports, or how do they feel about their progress and achievements. They just don't necessarily have the skill set for doing that. They're not at the age for being able to do that. So I do find it a little bit of a bizarre scenario where we're asking children to describe those things. However, it is expected, it does happen. So having a think about how we can prepare children for those conversations if we think they're going to flop into the Ofsted inspector's radar and he's going to want to talk to that person. How can they say what helps them learn most effectively, other than my teacher? Or can they say who is supporting them and how that support works? Okay. I've called this one the Pumpkin Patch Plan. That's only because I'm in October and we're talking the autumn here, so I've kind of planned it out as if I was doing this now. So if I was suddenly having a look at that framework, not that I haven't been looking at it for the last couple of months, I would be going, okay, I need to update my SEN information report, I need to check my provision maps, I need to deliver some whole staff training on the new framework and inclusive strategies, because this isn't just me. This is everybody. In the spring term, I need to be analysing that first batch of progress data, collecting some parent voice, pupil voice perhaps, doing some case samples just to put in that folder so that I've got them for me, for my confidence. And then in the summer term, looking at transition processes, having a look at the toolkit themes. Maybe I want to do a bit of personal evaluation, planning my next year priorities and developments. I think that's quite important as well. So if you are a new Senko to a school and you've walked into a little bit of a disaster zone, doing a bit of an audit against that framework to start with could be useful for you, because then you have got a way of saying, yep, I've come in, we're not where we're supposed to be, and here is what I am doing about it. And I would never be afraid to say to any inspector, yep, I acknowledge that that's not great, and this is what I'm doing about it, and it isn't going to change overnight, therefore I have given myself 12 weeks to show some impact, because then what you're saying, you're not saying I've got the blinkers on. You're not saying, oh, actually we're perfect and we're trying to hide that under the carpet, or we're ignoring it. You're saying, actually, I know my job and I acknowledge these issues, and this is what we are doing about it. And it is not going to be an overnight change. And that is positive. It feels negative when you're saying it, but it is positive. Never try to hide your negatives under the carpet, because if they find them, they're like skeletons in the cupboard. Yet another suitable Halloween suggestion there. But they are like skeletons in the cupboard. They will come tumbling out one after the other and haunt you. So, yeah, just be honest with those things. Okay, sometimes you don't know the answer and the lights go out, and I face this all of the time. There's a couple of posts just recently where people have been writing things like, I've been a Senko for 15 years and I still don't feel like I know anything. And I'm sitting here thinking, yep, imposter syndrome. I've been doing it 30 years and I still feel like I don't know anything. Or things have changed, or that's a new piece of terminology and it has completely thrown me. It's a constant learning curve, and you are not expected to know everything. I had an inspection and I was asked about a particular figure, and I want to say it was a neat figure, but it could have been something else. And I said, I think it can't have been neat figure, because our neat figure wouldn't have been 4%, so it must have been something else. But whatever it was, I said, oh, I think it's about 4%, but I can go and check for you. And the inspector went, yeah, okay, I'll just write 4% down, and then we'll see if you're right. And I thought, you know what, I'm definitely going to have to go and check now to make sure it's right. And I went and checked, and the figure was 3.8%. So I remember the numbers, I just can't remember what they were for. And I went back to him, I said, it's 3.8%, by the way. And he went, oh, you 4% was probably quite close then, wasn't it? Do you know what? I was happy with that. So when you get caught off guard, you need to have your response up your sleeve. So top one there, that's a good question. I'll confirm the precise data and I'll return within the hour with accurate figures, which is exactly what I kind of did. Didn't use that phrase exactly, put it in your own words, but it's okay to not know it off the top of your head. What you do need to do, though, is be able to find it really, really quickly, the 1 minute rule. Or the second one there is, yes, we identified that as a developmental area last term and we've begun improving systems. Let me show you where it is on our action plan. So here we're saying, yep, okay, you've picked up on a negative that I may have been trying to hide, but actually we have identified it for ourselves and this is what we're doing about it. The problem will arise if you are unaware of any of those negatives and you are not doing anything about it and you have not planned to do anything about it. That's where issues will start to arise. I'm going to add in some friendly ghosts here. So Casper's going to make an appearance. This is not you. This is not a job for the Senko. Yes, inclusion sits in there, but you'll see in a couple of minutes, it is not just the Senko. Because we have got inclusion and SEN across all of the inspection strands, we are going to have our subject leads on board, because they have got to show how SEN pupils are supported across the curriculum. We have got to have our senior leadership on board, and that's not just your school senior leadership, but that's also at governance and trustee level as well. We have got to have our safeguarding leads and our teacher that looked after if it's not you. And we also need our pastoral staff. And the reason for this is, as I say, we have got inclusion, and that's fine, but we also have it across all of their personal strands as well. And the last thing we want to happen is for them to look at, for example, the curriculum strand and go, oh, that one's referencing SEN. That must be for the Senko to do. when actually we've got our own strand to look at. So they need to be working with you. You need to be working with them. And yeah, you can get your amazing inclusion strand grade, but if they're not doing their part, their area is going to fall down. And you cannot take the blame for that, she said. Once they have gone, you need a bit of a debrief. So you can't give feedback. You can't tell them what the grade is if you've been privy to that. I know that some head teachers do let it slip. But this is about going back to people that have been involved, going back to that TA who was observed 3 times on Tuesday morning and saying, hey, you did a fantastic job. The inspector was talking about something you were doing with Freddie. I'm really pleased. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Anything like that is just boosts everybody back up, because it is exhausting. It's emotionally draining. Celebrate your strengths. Ignore what they've picked up on as the errors. Sometimes it will just be picking up an error for the sake of picking up an error. The fact they feel that they've got to find something. And again, I will admit to it, I've gone into schools and I've done their health checks, their SEN reviews, and I've got to the end of it, and I will be sitting there, and I have sat in meetings with the head teacher, with the deputy heads, with maybe the SEN governor and the SENCO, and I've said, you know what, I can't really give you anything to improve that doesn't feel like nitpicking. And very often what they'll say is, and give us the nitpicking things because they're quick wins. So sometimes you will hear what an inspector is saying as a negative and blow it out of proportion when actually it's a tiny little thing that they're just addressing. Yes, okay, if you not managed to hit the expected column, the green column I'm going to call it, and you're sitting in one of those lower columns, then yes, there is work to be done. But it isn't your work to be done, it's everybody's work. Everybody in your school plays a part in this. And then, if we are going to put any improvements in place, that is to be planned collaboratively, but not on the same day. It's a job for the following week. It might even be a job for when the report itself comes out. So head teacher usually gets the report. They get, I think it's 48 hours, or it certainly used to be, to proof check that, to make sure there's nothing incorrect sitting in there, because it is a snapshot, and they can challenge anything that is fundamentally incorrect. Can't usually challenge the judgments, to be fair, but only the sentences. It does happen, and it does delay the production of the final report. I don't know what their turnaround is for these graded cards, because we haven't had any done on this basis yet, but it will be interesting. So, we're not going to get the report for a couple of weeks, so take a bit of time to line your ducks up, gather things together, breathe. Okay, it's done. Now we can move and celebrate the strengths first. I have put on there, inspection is a snapshot, not a sentence, life sentence or a jail sentence. I always talk about my SEN reviews as being a snapshot, in the sense that I am blatantly aware that, I walk into your school for one day, I'm going on a Friday in a couple of weeks' time. I'm going to walk into that school on a Friday, and it may well have been a full moon with high winds, and the reception class has just been flooded, so is in the hallway instead, and 3 members of staff are off sick, or whatever else is going on. And because I recognise that, and I will go, yep, okay, that's what's happening, which is one of the reasons why I ask for 10 working days to turn my report around for the school, but I also give them the grace of 10 working days to come back to me with, oh, Abigail, you got the wrong end of the stick there. That isn't what normally happens in the school. Or you've misinterpreted our use of whatever word. because, of course, every school uses terminology differently. We actually meant it in this sense rather than this sense. And I let them come back to me with that. What I don't do is I don't change what I have judged, if you like, because they are judgments, but I will recognise it in my narrative. And inspections are pretty much the same. So just be aware it is a snapshot, but it isn't a life sentence. It doesn't matter, it only lasts a couple of years, even if it isn't the result you were hoping for. We do need in schools some form of transformation, and it's a cultural transformation that we actually need. So it isn't bolted on. SEN is no longer bolted on. It hasn't been for years, although it still feels like it. It is an inclusion statement in its own right, but it sits across every single other area of the Ofsted framework. So colleagues can no longer say, oh, that's an SEN thing. It has got to be everybody. What we really want is accessible evidence. Not just you that can access it, but any colleague that is asked a question is able to access up-to-date, accurate information. We want shared responsibility and collective ownership of inclusion across all staff and leadership and governance. And we want to show continuous improvement, not just sitting back on the laurels. I do inspections, I've got me using the word now. I do my health checks in some schools that were graded on the old Ofsted framework as outstanding. And you walk through the door and you think, how on earth did you get outstanding? Because what has happened is they've worked really, 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 really hard. They deserved their grade at that point in time, and they got their outstanding, and then they've sat back on their laurels. And they've not continued to maintain it or to even improve it. We should always be seeking improvement in what we're doing. Okay, so what I have here is my approach. It's my personal approach to this new framework, and I will show you these slides from inclusion. I am not going to share these slides. I'm going to be absolutely clear here. These are not downloadable. They're not something I'm going to be giving to you. They are telling you how you can do something for yourself. And there is a reason why I'm not sharing them, and that's because I believe you have got to have the context of your school in your head when you create these. Mine are very, very generic. I've created them for my own purpose, for use when I go to visit schools and do those health checks, but they are not going to be relevant to every school. You've got to have that nuance of context in there, and these don't. So if you have a look at the framework, the toolkit, and you look for the section on inclusion, there is a couple of pages of preamble that say this is what the inspectors are looking for. There is then a 3-column table that says needs attention, expected, standard, and strong. And then on the following page, there are 2 horizontal boxes, one that says urgent improvement and one that says exceptional. What I have done is I have used AI to support me with this, but basically I've taken each of the statements from the expected standard column, and they are typed at the top of this page. So learners identify pupils' needs quickly and accurately through clear, consistent and inclusive systems. Support is adjusted promptly, and staff understand how to use assessment to inform provision. So that is the first sentence in the first box under expected standard, under the inclusion toolkit. What I've then done is I've said, oh heck, what does that mean? And I've broken it down. So to me, and using the information from those previous pages in the toolkit, to me, what they're looking for there is a clear graduated approach embedded in everyday practice. They're looking for early and accurate assessment of needs, including emerging needs. They're looking for records of referrals, graduated response cycles and assessments. They're looking for evidence of timely action following identification, and they may be looking for minutes or notes from multi-agency meetings. That is my list, if you want, of what I'm kind of looking for to show that this is at expected standard. Some of you might look at that and go, oh, we're already there. We do far more than that. So what I've done then is I've then taken each one of those statements and I've asked AI to do this for me. I've said, oh, if this was the expected standard, if it was stronger practice, what would it look like? And that's where that strong column and the exceptional column have come from. But I've also then looked at it, back to the green column. What would this look like if I'm not quite there? I've asked those two questions. Three questions. I've read the expected standard. That's at the top. The leaders identify pupils' needs quickly. I've broken it down. I've gone to each one of those breakdowns and I've looked and I've gone, have I got that? Yes. Have I got more than that? Yes. And I move it to the strong column. Or am I not quite there? In that case, it needs attention. And then I've done the same thing again. So if I'm in the needs attention column, I've got inconsistent or incomplete referral records. What could be worse than that? An absence of a systematic identification process. Or I've got consistent application of identification processes across plans in the strong column. What would be even better than that if it was being used as a model for other schools, perhaps within my multi-academy trust or my local authority? Okay, so that's what I've done. I've broken down each one of them. So this first question there, the second one, which I will read with you, is leaders have high expectations for these pupils. Typically, the support they provide following specialist advice if needed reduces barriers to their learning and or well-being. Again, taken it, broken it down, usually into 5 bullet points, because I don't think you really need any more than that. And then ask myself, do I do more than that? Or, I don't think I do all of that. I'm not quite there. What might it look like? The third one is about curriculum access. So we get curriculum access, but curriculum access also get SEN and inclusion. So leaders take a graduated approach, as explained earlier, which means pupils' needs are generally met. Staff receive suitable training and support to implement the approach. Assessment, which goes with the assessment and achievement strand. Leaders have a secure understanding of pupils' needs and the progress they make. That's quite simple and straightforward, but it can be broken down into quite a few chunks. Strategy alignment. They use appropriate evidence to inform pupil premium strategy. So this is about pupil premium, not SEN. When selecting approaches to take, the strategy and approaches are generally understood and implemented by staff. So of the 9 statements that sit in inclusion, 6 of them are inclusion and SEN, and 3 of them are for other areas. So this is one of the ones that's for another area. So if pupil premium's not yours, it's very definitely going to fall under somebody else's remit. The SENCO, the qualified SENCO, note qualified, has sufficient authority within the leadership structure to make a positive difference for pupils with SEND. Now, I have taken that sentence literally. Qualified SENCO, I don't think I actually included that in the expected standard, but SENCO is qualified, probably belongs in there, has sufficient authority within the leadership structure. So I have put the SENCO as part of the senior leadership structure to make a positive difference to pupils' SEND. So clear lines of accountability and decision-making authority. Evidence of the SENCO input into strategic planning. SENCO involved in key leadership meetings and decisions. The SENCO staff understand and recognise the SENCO's leadership role. I can imagine at this point there are several of you screeching at the screen with, oh my God, no, I am nowhere near this. Look at the orange column. Your role lacks clarity or is inconsistently applied. You've got limited evidence of your influence on strategic decisions. You're not consistently present at leadership discussions. The accountability lines are blurred or informal. Staff are unsure about your authority or your responsibilities. This is not something you personally are in control of. It is a it's your senior leadership, trustees, governors' decision where you sit within that. If they have got any sense, they will be reading this one and going, oh, flipping heck, we'd better move our Senko pretty quickly. There is a red column there, by the way, should you feel that you need to look at the red column. But I think this one's quite a key one. It's quite important. It may well influence changes for a lot of Senkos in schools. I have leadership there, so leaders are committed to and understand their role in the local area partnership strategy to improve the experiences of and outcomes for pupils with SEND. Where appropriate, they ensure that local partnership strategies have a positive impact on pupils at the school. It's a bit of a mouthful. And we have looked after, so this one's not necessarily yours. Leaders support pupils who are known or previously known to children's social care, including looked after and previously looked after children. Well, staff work effectively, including with the virtual school, so that pupils' personal education plans generally improve their learning opportunities and experiences. Possibly not yours, but could be. And then AP, again, may not be yours. Alternative provision is commissioned appropriately and is used in pupils' best interests. Pupils' best interests. Highlight, pupils' best interests. Leaders take responsibility for the education and welfare of pupils who are placed in it. Okay. I went through those fairly quickly. That's because, as I said, I think you need to take those sentences yourself and you can find them within the toolkit. And I think you need to do a similar task to me, which is, what does this mean to me in my school? Create your green column. Then go, okay, what would it look like if it was stronger? What would it look like if it's not quite in place? Use AI to support you doing that. Or better still, I don't have colleagues to bounce ideas off. I would rather have sat and done this with a group of colleagues and gone, what do we think this looks like? And where do we think we sit within this? But because I don't, I use AI to do it, and it is a good starting place for everybody. So go and do that and put it within the context of your school. And that's the reason I'm not sharing it with you, is because it really does have to be within the context of your school. It took me, I'm going to say, probably about an hour to generate all 9 of those tables with that information in there, using the Ofsted toolkit and extracting those sentences and then asking it. Well, I gave it bullet points and said, this is kind of what I think belongs in the expected standard column. Have I missed anything? Because I'm only reading a sentence. I might be making a mistake. Maybe I've read it wrong. And it may well have given me something else. And then I've asked it to do those tweaks to either side of it. It is time well worth spending. I have put there final treats for schools. It's not quite your final treat because I will flick to another screen in a second before I leave you. So things I think you should be doing whilst you are preparing for what comes next. First one, review your SEN information report. Make sure it isn't sitting in some governor's ratification system or sitting on the data controller's desk and they haven't uploaded it to your school website, because you will be facing a compliance issue if it isn't there. So make sure that that's up to date and not the one from 2022, which is the one I read the other day. Have a look at your staff confidence. So if your TAs really are going to struggle articulating things, giving them a couple of sentences to prompt them. And if you are a Sensible Senko member, of course, don't forget in the Halloween toolkit, there is some materials in there that will support with that, conversations they can have, top tips, etc. Develop a couple of case samples if that is useful for you. Say I have a memory like a sieve, so I probably would have something scribbled down. I wouldn't even put it on a Word document. I would literally scribble it down on a piece of paper. But it's for me. It's my purpose. It's not for anybody else. Audit your evidence. If you can't find it, nobody else is going to be able to find it. And the last thing you want, and I find this massively, is to be sat at a computer with somebody breathing over your shoulder thinking, where is that file? Where did I put it? Is it in that one? Is it in that one? Is it in the red one? Is it in the green one? Just sort it out. Make sure you've got this really simple system for using it. I know there's a rule in IT about no more than 3 clicks to get anywhere. Personally, I find that doesn't help me. I literally branch my folders down as far as possible. So I may well have one that says, let's go for inclusion. Just to borrow a slide for a minute. Inclusion, and then looked after, and then it might be PEPs, and then it might have learning, and then it might have a couple of documents for learning in there. So there's 4 subfolders within that, and then that whole thing might be sitting within inspection, and then the inspection might be sitting within 2025, 2026. So, for me, that works. I like to have that granularity because it helps me to find what I'm looking for. Alternatively, if you name your folders correctly, and I don't because I use dates on my folders, but if you name your files correctly, you could always use the search bar up at the top. I just find that sometimes I'm looking at the search bar and I've found the document, but there are 7 or 8 documents. And I'm not really sure which one it is I need. So I find it easier to use that branching pathway. I say I date my files, so I put a date at the front of it and then give it a name that is sort of relevant. And then keeping conversations alive. So don't just collect that parent voice, pupil voice at the point of inspection. Try and do it throughout the year, because then you can act on the information. You're kind of getting rid of some of those negative things that they might feel the need to say during an inspection, because you've already given them the chance to say it. Now I'm just going to move up my screen for a second and exit that. I'm just going to open the link in a new tab, that one. I'm just going to open this one because I have taken all of the new framework and started to look at it in that sense that I've just been sharing with you from the inclusion perspective. So this one is curriculum, was quality of education. And what I've done is taken the same statements. So these are the curriculum statements. There happens to be 8 of these. These are the ones that sit under expected standard. So we're reading each one of those. And then what we're doing is we're breaking it down the exact same way. So have we got curriculum understanding? Now, there isn't actually anything in that one that's directly SEN related. But if I go to this one, curriculum sequencing, if you look in the column for expected standard there, I've got a bullet point that is, this is something that is relevant to us, in other words, where we sit within this strand. So leaders review and refine the curriculum systematically, evaluating its effectiveness in securing progression for all pupils. Because it says all, that means we've got our inclusion included in there. It means we've got our SEN included in there. So our curriculum teams must be doing it for all pupils. That's their bit of inclusion in there. Have a look at another one. So we've got this one here. Staff analyse and discuss assessment information collaboratively to inform planning and interventions. Interventions very much firmly sit in the remit of SEN and inclusion. So we've got it in bold. I've written it in bold in that particular box because at the expected standard, if our curriculum team want to achieve it, that is what has to be happening. I can click onto a couple of the others. This one's got, 3 of them: high quality teaching and support. What does that look like? So we've got leaders and staff prioritise high quality teaching as a foundation for all learning. Targeted academic support supplements rather than replaces effective classroom practice. Teaching is consistently focused on securing strong understanding for all pupils. Interventions are timely, well planned and evaluated for effectiveness. Teachers plan for individual needs through adaptive teaching strategies, ensuring all pupils can access ambitious learning. So you can see here, we can't get at expected standard within the curriculum unless those things are happening. I've got the hiccups again. And this particular one, I mean, reasonable adjustments is ours. It kind of sits in our field anyway. The whole column is there. If those things are not happening within the curriculum, it's going to pull down. And that's what I mean when I say inclusion is built across everything and everybody has got to take responsibility. Disadvantaged groups, this is inclusion as opposed to just SEND. And then we've got monitoring and evaluation, which I have a feeling I didn't actually get around to highlighting. I kind of ran out of time doing things. But as I say, I've created them for my purposes, but for you, you need to do them for yourselves. Just take those statements that sit at the top of that expected column within the Ofsted framework and go, what does this look like within my school? Because the context of your school is absolutely key to getting this right. I have to work from something generic. You don't. You can make it specific to you and your school and your needs and whatever else is going on in there. So let me exit my big screen there. Let me take you back to that one and scroll back up to my wonderful haunted house. Present it on my big screen and go. Because that was your tricks, treats and ticking boxes. The haunted house of inspections, which wasn't quite so scary because we watched the YouTube video first and we knew what was coming. Hopefully it'll help those of you who are having a bit of a panic about the new framework. I think it's a positive framework. I think there's lots to embrace in there. There's lots for us to do as Senkos, admittedly, but I also think there's a lot of higher level thinking that needs to go on as well in terms of structures of schools and where Senkos sit in some schools in terms of senior leadership and responsibilities and admin and all the rest of it. So that's my take on it. I am not anti-Ofsted. I never have been. I don't like them, don't get me wrong. But I do believe there is a need for a regulatory body, and this is what we have. I haven't shown you a grade card because they just look like traffic lights and they feel a bit weird and they look a bit primary schoolish, if I'm honest, so I'm staying away from them. But I think we've got a chance here for a positive change in terms of inclusion and SEND within schools, and I think we should embrace that. I think it's our chance to make change and make change for the better. And we'll wait until the spring term and see what the SEN white paper brings us in terms of other changes, because none of this has been tied together, has it? Curriculum review coming out soon. Ofsted's just come out and is about to be hit the ground running. And then we've got the SEND one, which will then get tagged onto the end of it. I'm be interested to see how much the SEND one is brought in line with what's previously been produced, or if it isn't, and therefore Ofsted might have to change track or the curriculum framework if we get that has changed as well. We shall see. Your guess is as good as mine. Enjoy yourselves, take care, and I will see you when I am next back in the studio. I'm sorry for no camera today. So it's probably a good thing because my nose is itching like crazy. My hair is sticking up on end because I've had to tie it back so I can keep throwing up everywhere. Far too much information. And just one of those days. At least it wasn't on an Ofsted day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
There we go. Okay. So thanks to Abigail for doing that. I know that there were some technical issues alongside for the Facebook group and other things, and it keeps kind of buffering in or out. So we'll put this video up as soon as we can do. Just remember there are the resources on the website for the Senko diet that we've created, all free for members to be able to kind of download the 2 pieces. The 5-minute checklist and the clarity on speaking to an Ofsted inspector and how to kind of go about doing that. So that's there. And then next week, I don't even know what we've got next week. What have we got next week, people? I don't even know what we've got next week, so you're going to have to bear with me while I click a few buttons and actually find out what is on next week. Should have planned this bit a bit more, but better. So we have... Oh, of course, it's November next week, isn't it? So in November, we're going for Senko Diet into communication. So we've got another 30 communication pieces for you, including some more downloads around that topic. And then in December, we're going to change it around slightly because we don't really want to give you loads and loads of written stuff. I'd prefer to give you more downloadable stuff. So we're going to switch it around to a downloadable content piece for December and then work backwards. So you'll have loads of stuff that you can download without having to kind of sign up. And just make sure that you're coming along to our Senko meetups if you're there in any of the areas that we're doing as well there. Other to that, I just wish you've had a lovely October half term. And you're going to go out there now and scare people tomorrow because, as it should be, I think Halloween is probably the best place ever. Best ever event. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I've been Gavin. Abigail's been Abigail, although she's not here. And I need to go and collect her. So, bye everyone. If I click the button in the right place.